we've talked first round pick. We've talked second round pick. We've talked pretty much everything. Yesterday, I want to say, I don't remember who it was. I don't want to give credit to the wrong person. And at the same time, I don't want to lose the credit or ignore the credit to the right person. But somebody tossed in the chat that there were reports or speculation out there that the Steelers could look at a name like Alex Highsmith or Dan Moore Jr. to trade to the San Francisco 49ers for Brandon Aiyuk. And at first, it doesn't make any sense. And I still don't know if it does make any sense. But I have three names, and those two names are included in this list that I think the Steelers could consider dealing for Brandon Aiyuk that are real possibilities that you look at and say, does it make the perfect trade? No, far from it. But does it ease the compensation of a draft pick? Yes. And are the 49ers most likely more willing to make a deal because of it? Yes. And I look at it simply because the 49ers are trying to win a Super Bowl right now. And if you look at their side of things, they want a team that's ready to win a Super Bowl. So a draft pick in 2025 doesn't win them a Super Bowl in 2024. That's just not how that works. Maybe it keeps their roster boosted a year from now and certainly helps, but is Brandon Aiyuk really worth the 24th pick in the draft? No, not really. He's worth the 15th pick in the draft, the 10th pick in the draft, something like that. And the Steelers aren't going to be willing or able to give them that. So you give them a guy like Alex Highsmith, you give them a guy like Dan Moore that you could plug and play those guys, and they make a significant impact. I mean, you add Alex Highsmith, he immediately replaces Chase Young and boosts the level of, I don't know, greatness or play or whatever that you want to say there of Chase Young. He's a much better player than Chase Young is, and he gives you much better contributions than Chase Young does. So Alex Highsmith is an immediate upgrade for the 49ers. That makes a lot of sense. Those are the names. We'll start with the two that we know, and then I'll toss a third one out there. I'll see your reaction on all of them. Alex Highsmith is the start here. Makes a lot of sense for the 49ers. They get an edge rusher. They get a guy that makes an immediate starting impact on their defense, keeps their Super Bowl hopes high, if not increases them, because right now they're looking at an offense that doesn't have Brandon Aiyuk anyways, so you might as well add a strong defender, an outside linebacker that can make a massive impact right off the bat. Plus, he's playing alongside Nick Bosa. I mean, there's not much of a downgrade there. You are essentially doing the same thing, just going from a guy named TJ Watt to a guy named Nick Bosa. For the Steelers side of this, it makes no sense, little to no sense, but if they're just swinging at anything, yeah, I guess you could toss Alex Highsmith's name out there. They have Nick Herbig, so you could start him, but you don't have a backup. You're hoping that Nick Herbig is a stud right now, but that is far from a guarantee. TJ Watt literally gets hurt and you lose. That is the calculation. That's the formula. That's what happens. If TJ Watt is not playing, you lose football games. So don't you want as much help, as many resources as possible to try to overcome that? If it does happen, he's 30 years old. You don't know how his body's going to hold up with each season that's ahead of him. And you're right back in the spot of, yeah, maybe Jeremiah Moon is good. Maybe David Perales is good. Maybe they're Derek Tushka. Maybe they're Taco Charlton. Maybe you're sitting around with a bunch of nobodies again, and you find yourself in a position where TJ is missing games or Nick Herbig is missing games, and it's nobody on the other side of that defensive line. That's a massive miss for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think the risk reward is there when it comes to Pittsburgh's side of things. But again, if they're thinking we're going to do this and it's going to happen, yeah. And on top of that, when it comes to the financial side of things, you get rid of Alex Highsmith's contract. It makes it a lot easier to pay for Brandon Aiyuk's, and that kind of makes some sense there. Again, do I think it's the right move? No. Do I think it's the biggest name that they could toss out there and the 49ers would probably bite at it? Yeah, I do. And I think when Kaboli tossed it out there on 93.7 The Fan yesterday, my thought was, that's crazy, but I agree with them that the 49ers would bite at this. I don't know if the Steelers would want them to bite at this. We talked yesterday, but I'll ask you again. Alex Highsmith to the Steelers or to the 49ers doesn't make sense. Would it be a chance that, or would there be a chance that they could make that happen?
Yeah, we saw that initially as we were recording yesterday. So you had to really go through a bunch of different things. And one of the things that I looked at since then is the guy opposed or on the opposite side of Nick Bosa is Leonard Floyd. He had over 10 sacks last year. So
Yeah.
again, that kind of takes away from they need that guy to fill Chase Young's role because they kind of got that guy in Leonard Floyd. And I understand Leonard Floyd's pretty good. I feel like Alex Highsmith is probably a little bit better. He's probably top 20 as far as edge rushers in the NFL this season. But at the same time, I feel like that's a minimal upgrade for them for a pretty big downgrade from what Brandon Aiyuk for Ricky Pearsall in that position. I understand that they have plenty of other skill position guys that are best of the best, McCaffrey,
Yeah.
Kittle, Debo, all those guys. But at the same time, when you look at it from the Steelers side of things, the only thing that I'm thinking is if they pull the trigger on this, that tells you a lot about what they think about Nick Herbig. I'm bullish on Nick Herbig, so are you, but that's a huge step, like you mentioned, going from being a solid number 3 that could potentially make a major impact as a number 3 to you're going to need to be in there 80% of the snaps, and you're going to need to be able to win at least half of those on the opposite side of TJ Watt to fill the shoes that you'd have to fill. So I think it is just too big of a swing for the Steelers.
I agree. I think it's a massive swing. On the 49ers side of things, like, I don't think Aiyuk plays for them this year, no matter what, unless a deal gets done. I think he'd sit out the year. We always argue like, oh, it never works out. Guys are going to learn eventually. They never do. They never learn. The players constantly say, I'm not going to play this year. And you're sitting around going, it never works out, dude. Don't do it. Don't sit out a season. It does not work in your favor. They do it all the time. They constantly do it. I mean, and some guys don't. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley both kind of lucked themselves into good situations with the way that they handled stuff, but I don't know if that's going to happen in San Francisco. And I think that they're going to be stuck with what they're looking at anyways. I agree with you that it's a downgrade, but I think that's where they're sitting. I also agree that it's a massive swing and one that I'm not willing to make if I'm the Steelers GM, but maybe they are. And maybe if the trade price is good enough, maybe they think about it. The other name is Dan Moore Jr. This is the easiest of the three in my head. Get rid of him. Trade him. What are you waiting for? Why are you sitting around saying Dan Moore's got to stay? I don't care about tossing Troy Fautanu in the fire. I do that. If that's what it called for, toss him in the fire. This isn't a massive, this is a name. You have to start him. If you don't, you're taking a significant step backwards. It's a Dan Moore is your 5th best starting offensive lineman. Okay, if your 5th best starting offensive lineman is a rookie that is struggling a little bit, it's not that big of a downgrade. It's not that big of a step backwards. I think Dan Moore is the easiest one. To replace him as a swing tackle, effortless. Spencer Anderson, Dylan Cook, they're both options there. You don't even got to worry about it. You could start Troy Fautanu and make that happen. You're still going to have to give up something. You're still definitely going to have to give up maybe a 2nd or a 3rd round pick if you're the 49ers. But if you're the Steelers and you're thinking, I don't want to give up a 1st round pick, a 2nd and Dan Moore Jr. might get the job done. I think that's an easy one. Get him out of here. Trade him. I love Dan Moore. I think he's a great person. I think he works hard. I think he's a great leader. Good locker room presence. Not bad on the football field. If you're talking about a Brandon Aiyuk trade him. That one different? Does that pull your strings a little bit different than Alex Highsmith?
From a Steelers perspective, 100%. Listen,
Yeah.
I understand that you're throwing Troy Fautanu into the fire, but at the same time, there's a pretty big safety blanket that you're getting back in return in
Yeah.
Brandon Aiyuk, who is one of the better route runners in the National Football League. But as Strawberry Reacts put in the comment section here, they have one of the best, if not the best, left tackles in the league
I
in
agree.
San Francisco. So, and that's Trent Williams, of course. So I don't know if that would work for them, but again, there's a reason that Kaboli threw that out there. He's aware of the fact that they have Trent Williams as well. So I'm not sure why they would want him, but if it's on the table, 100%. If they're willing to do that trade, and I'm Omar Khan, I would say, okay, when and where do I sign?
Look, sometimes it's about safety nets, and Trent Williams is pushing 40 years old. So at some point, you got to look at him and say, what's the plan if something happens? I don't know what their depth looks like, but Dan Moore is not a bad offensive tackle in the NFL, and I think he could be competent somewhere else. I think you could add him to the mix. Is he the strongest option? No, but do I think he's an option? Certainly. And I'm not a 49ers beat reporter, so I'm not sitting here saying that's a target that they're looking for. I'm just saying if we're naming players, and I believe there are 3 of them, that makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers to toss into a trade package, because yesterday it was brought to everybody's attention that, well, maybe the Steelers would toss a player out there in a trade package. Dan Moore Jr. is second on that list and makes the most sense for the Steelers side of things because, well, you don't need him. You just could replace him, and the return is much higher than what you're going to give up. Third on this list is a name that not many people have mentioned, but man, dude, if they need a safety, why not? What is the big deal here? And that is Damonte Kazee. I think Damonte Kazee is valuable. I think he's a good backup safety. I think he's added a lot of quality presence to the Steelers defense over the last 2 years. He's on the Dan Moore Jr. level of you could trade him. Nobody should bat an eye. Doesn't make a difference. Now, the only thing that would hold the Steelers back from trading him, and I don't know if the 49ers need a backup safety, but I do know that they lost Taj Gibson over the last year. And, well, if they need a safety 3, Damonte Kazee is a quality safety 3. If they need a nickelback, Damonte Kazee is a quality nickelback. He can play both positions. He's versatile. Cool. You want to toss him in a package? Sounds good. The thing with Damonte Kazee from the Steelers side of things would be the only reason that they hold back on this is they're not looking to sign a Patrick Peterson or a Chandon Sullivan or Stephon Gilmore, and they're rocking with the 3 slot corners that they have, and none of them work out because, quite frankly, none of them are going to work out. You're not looking at Beanie Bishop or Josiah Scott or Anthony Averett and saying these guys are going to be the starting slot, and I'm feeling very confident that they're going to work out. Nobody's sitting around doing that. Not one person is saying for the first 8 games of the season, the Steelers are going to have a stud at slot corner. So if they keep Damonte Kazee, it would be to bump Deshaun Elliott into the nickel or into the slot and let Kazee start at safety to kind of limit the regress, the step backwards that you get while missing Cam Sutton. But again, that's the easiest fix in the book. Go sign Chandon Sullivan. Go sign Patrick Peterson. Go sign anybody else. Test Darius Rush in the slot. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You could go sign Patrick Peterson, who could also play deep safety, and say, there you go. Sounds good. We just fixed it, and it cost us less money, and we got Brandon Aiyuk in return. That one makes so much sense to me. I like Kazee. I think Kazee's a good teammate. I think he fits what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for. I also think he's easily replaceable on the free agency market. And again, if you're willing to do that and bump that trade value down to a 2nd round pick or maybe a 2nd and a 4th, yeah, sounds good. Like if that's what you're willing to do to avoid a 1st round pick and the Steelers are looking at it that way, I think that one makes a lot of sense. Damonte Kazee, I think I'm the only one who's tossed that name out there, but I feel good about it. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, and he fits the mold for the San Francisco 49ers as well. He is overly physical, and that's what the 49ers like to do on defense. So, from their perspective, I mean, it's always good to add more depth, especially at that position, because you look at what happened to him last year. They lost Talise Fuaga, not Fuaga, that's the lineman. I'm trying to think of who the
I
safety
know who
is
you're
from
talking
there.
about. The dude who works with Troy Polamalu. I couldn't tell you his name though.
Yeah, Hufanga, I believe is his name.
Ufanga. Yes,
But
yes, yes.
they always could use more depth on that defense because that's what Kyle Shanahan likes. He likes physicality and depth on defense. So I can see them wanting somebody like Damonte Kazee. But again, it's similar for any of these players going back is really it's up to Brandon Aiyuk. If Aiyuk decides he doesn't want to play, then it changes what the 49ers are willing to get back for him because it's really, as you mentioned earlier, trading away somebody that you're not going to get this year anyway for somebody that could help you towards getting over the hump and finally getting that Super Bowl. So KZ is a name that I hadn't thought of, but definitely fits the mold here. If they're just saying, "Hey, we need to get this off the books. He's not coming back anyway, and we need a piece that is going to help us this year." KZ fits that mold pretty well.
Yeah, and people will say, "Oh, Justin Simmons is still on the market. Go sign a Justin Simmons." Justin Simmons is going to be worth $10 million a year. KZ's worth $1 million. So if you're the 49ers, it's a cheaper deal, and I get it. It's not the same player, but sometimes it's about financially what makes sense. Justin Simmons might not make the best sense, and KZ might be an easy option. It's the Steelers with Stephon Gilmore and Dante Jackson and this and that. Like, sometimes it's just about financials, and the 49ers need to fix the financials. So I don't know. I think those are the 3 names. Do I think that it happens? Yeah, I still am very sold that the Steelers are going to land a wide receiver at some point because I don't think this is fixable on the 49ers end. I've had some conversations and I've talked to some people about, hey, how you feeling on San Francisco side? And they're a little bit more optimistic than us here in Pittsburgh are, but they're still very, I don't know about this one. It's getting tougher by the day. A month ago, if you asked me, I'd feel a lot better. But where we stand right now, It just doesn't feel like the 49ers are putting in the effort that they should be putting in to make this deal worthy for Brandon Aiyuk, and it doesn't feel like Ayuk's willing to budge. So it's tough times for the 49ers, and I still think I stand pretty firmly, but if they're looking to make a deal and they need a player, I'm tossing those three out there. But we'll have more. Look at, I'm saying what I say next Friday. Next Friday is still my first mark here. I don't think another thing gets done. I don't think we're looking at a trade. The earliest is next Friday, and then we go to August, the second week of August, third week of August, and I still feel pretty good about that.